Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Here.
Rick Smith.
Here.
Howard Solomon.
Would you rise for the pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have public participation and recognition. This is acceptance of gifts and donations, and it's an action item that the Board of Education accept with gratitude a $5,000 grant from Monsanto awarded to DeKalb High School robotics team. This is the fourth year that Monsanto has awarded the team this grant. The money will be used to cover the 2019 FIRST Robotics competition, registration fee, and the donation of $960 from the DeKalb County Farm Bureau's Meat for Education program to be used to purchase meat for food classes at DeKalb High School. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
No one here from Monsanto? No.
Doesn't look like it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Let me in.
Yep.
Thanks to Monsanto
Yeah.
for that generous donation.
Next, we have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism is not in order. Any cards? Okay. Next, we have board committee reports and correspondence. Anybody got anything? All right. Next, we have possible expulsion of student number 112018. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the expulsion of student number 112018 for the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year, including the 2019 summer session. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
No.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next is the non-business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through E. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Next is the business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through D.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Next is business and finance. Request to bid custodial supplies, and this is a discussion informational item. Tammy?
What I'm bringing forth tonight is just a request to go out to bid for custodial supplies. Every couple of years, we do just go out to make sure that we're getting our best pricing on this. I did request this last year, but based on timing of rolling out summer planning and that our companies do provide our training to our staff this summer, we did delay that. And so again, I'm just going to forward a request to get this done at the first of the
Any questions for Tammy?
Tim, when you do this type of going out for bid, the nature of the bidders, do we have individual supply set or just one type of supply that you might go independent on, like if you were getting food service supplies from here and, cleaning supplies from there and,
This is specifically for cleaning supplies, and we would, we go to a vendor. At times, we still have the opportunity to price out options throughout the school year, but when we have a regular order monthly by our head custodians in regards to our products that we use at all buildings consistently, it would be then from that one provider.
so we effectively, even if we see a better price for something somewhere else, we can't take it because we're committed to that supply.
Actually, we have the option
We
to.
do.
Mhm.
Okay.
Other questions for Tammy? Do we have a consensus to bring this back as an action item at the next,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have request to bid summer projects 2019. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve administration to go out to bid for the following projects: asphalt repairs, seal coating at DHS, CRMS, and Huntley Middle School, flooring replacements at Jefferson and Lincoln, HVAC improvements at HMS, tennis court resurfacing at DHS, gym floor replacement at Founders, roof replacements at Lincoln and Littlejohn. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, is that consistent with the lifespan of the tennis courts? I mean, is this, the tennis courts have a lifespan? This is consistent with resurfacing on those tennis courts?
Yes, typically it's about an average of 8 years is when we would be looking to be doing replacing. Based on the cracks that are currently in the tennis court, instead of just doing a temporary repair of the cracks, we felt it was better to move forward and get this done properly.
And how long has that been?
We opened up in 2011. It will be 8 years next
Right.
year.
Thank you.
All right. Roll call?
Craig Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Halgren,
Yes.
Gary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Next, we have request for proposal, RFP for pupil transportation services. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve administration to request proposals and bids for pupil transportation services. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Halgren,
Yes.
Gary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Yes.
Craig Smith.
Yes.
Next, we have approval of estimated tax levy 2018 tax year. This is an action item that the Board of Education approved one of the estimated tax levy request options for the 2018 tax levy year for publication. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Cindy?
At the last board meeting, I had presented information about our tax levy. This is a little bit less information, but just focusing on the different options that we can look at based on the discussion we had at the last board meeting. So again, just a reminder of the tax levy calendar. Tonight we will need to approve an estimate so we can get that publicized and get posted in the newspaper. And then we would hold a public hearing on the tax levy at the December 18th board meeting and also adopt that levy at that time. And we need to file that levy with the county clerk by December 26th. I have just a brief explanation of the PTEL, is what it's called, which is the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. For this county in DeKalb, it was enacted in 1999 and it regulates and limits the growth of property taxes. That was the intent of the law. It allows for an annual inflation increase in the levy. And then also not all counties are under PTEL. There are some counties that are not actually, we've got one just to the west of us, Ogle County, and to the south that they do not fall under this limitation. So they have a different way that they handle their tax levy and they have a little more flexibility with that. Our school district levy changes each year based on 3 variables: the consumer price index, which is that inflation number, any new growth or property, and any change in the district's annual debt schedule with our bond payments. And the tax extension can only increase by the CPI, which is 2.1% for the 2018 tax levy year, or 5%, whichever is less, plus any of the new property that gets added each year to the tax roll. I know this looks like a lot of numbers, but I wanted to go through each of the different steps of the tax levy so to get a little bit better understanding of how this calculation works. So basically, the first step is to look at what our EAV was back in 2017, which was about $700 million. And that also equates to about a third of the market value. 2018 estimated EAV change is about 4.1% based on the estimates that were received from the DeKalb County Assessor. So if you take that 700 million from 2017 times the 4.1% increase, the estimated EAV without new growth is about 730 million. So in the estimate that we received from the assessor for new growth is about 2.5 million. So when you add the 2.5 million to the 729 based on the existing property, our estimated total EAV is about 732 million for 2018. So the way that the tax levy gets calculated is you take the 2017 operating extension from the county, so that what was extended to us on an operating basis from the county last year, about 49 million. And with the inflation number, CPI for 2.1%. So if you take that number, the 49 million times the 2.1%, the increase that we could get from inflation is about $1 million, a little over $1 million. Then the next piece of that is you take that 49 million, which was extended last year, and you add the million for the inflation. So the most that we can get for 2018 is the 50 million, a little over 50 million based on that inflation number. And that is before the new growth. Then when you take that 50 million divided by the EAV for the existing increase in the EAV, you have an operating tax rate of about 6.86%. So that's how you get to that operating tax rate. Then the next step is to take that operating tax rate times the new growth, which was a $2.5 million number, to come up with what the estimated increase in the levy could be for new growth. Then you basically take what was expended in last year of the 49 million plus the new revenue, which is the existing EAV growth, or number, I guess you could say, the new growth number of the 778,000 to come up with our estimated operating levy of about 50.2 million based on the October estimates. I know it's a lot of math, but I think it's important to go through each of those different steps. So the kind of continuing with that, because now the next part of the calculation is once you figure out that operating levy, then you look at what your annual debt service is. And they basically call that the non-capped, meaning that that's not under the PTEL, because we basically can levy for the based on how our debt schedule is set up. And the county actually levies this for us. Our annual debt service for 1920, because remember this 18 levy is affecting our 1920 fiscal year, is about 5.6 million, and this is based on previously approved debt. This also includes a deficiency levy amount of about $42,000. And each year we receive a rebate from the federal government for our bonds, which is Build America bonds that we got in 2009. And because of sequestration and the budget cuts that the feds have made, we receive a little bit less. And each year I come to the board to ask, do we want to levy for what we didn't receive in the previous year? And last year, the board decided not to do that, so I always included within the total, so we can get the total that's the worst case scenario, let's say. So within that total is that BAP interest rate rebate that we don't receive from the government. So when you take that debt service plus the divided by the estimated EAV in total, this would be the estimated bond and interest rate, so that 0.76135. So this is what you saw last time in terms of that operating levy, which is $1.2 million increase, about 2.46%, divided in interest with that number as well, about 10.42% increase from the prior year levy. So a total levy request, or well, not necessarily request, this is just based on the estimates of about 56 million, so 3.21%. And this is if these estimates did come to fruition, so these things actually did occur. So then we're looking here at the operating tax levy plus that debt tax rate. So an estimated tax rate of about 7.62. Here's just a real brief history of where our tax rate has been since 2014 and what that operating rate levy tax rate looked like in the bond and interest. and then the total rate. So you can see over the last few years, our tax rate has been decreasing. A lot of that has to do with our EAV is going up, so the tax rate goes down in conjunction with that. So based on this rate, the 7.62, the estimated increase to a homeowner with about 150,000 market value is about $115 or 3.4%. So this was the original request that we had at our November 6th meeting, asking for an additional amount to provide a cushion for any changes in estimated EAV or additional new growth. Because we do not know actual EAV or new growth until March or April of 2019 when the extension numbers are final. Again, the county will only extend us what we can get per the PTEL calculation, which I went through previously. And any extra amount that we don't get is basically eliminated by the county. We just won't receive that. We only can get that maximum amount that gets calculated through that calculation. And again, just a reminder that the district does not receive 100% of what is extended because we have some corporate tax abatements as well as tax appeals happen within that time frame. So we never get 100% of that number. We get something less. And it kind of depends on our abatements. This last levy year was about 97% of that total. So here's option one that we're going to be looking at. Here we're reducing the operating levy request by a little bit, but we're also abating the bonded interest levy. So we're reducing the operating request from the previous meeting. What we're doing is we're covering for the potential increase in new growth from the potential for the TIP 3 increment, which may occur by the end of the calendar year, which would be included in our new growth, which is about 5.4 million. Plus another $1 million in the new growth just to, take advantage, or if there is a change with what the assessor had told us. Also, we would not request to increase the bonded interest levy for that bad interest rate rebate that I talked about. We would reduce the bonded interest levy by 1.7 million, and we would need to use dollars from our operating fund balance to cover that abatement. Right now, as of 6/30, we had about 35.5 million in fund balance, which is about 43.5%. We'll talk later in the meeting about the IGA that's available. We could use the funds we received from the TIP surplus to help support support that 1.7 million if the board would like to do that. In this scenario, the taxpayer gets a one-time savings, and then what we would want to do is we're working with FFAC to develop an annual bonded interest tax abatement schedule so we can kind of keep this process rolling along. Because we don't want to be on a roller coaster ride with the taxpayers. We want to be able to provide relief on a consistent basis. This provides some flexibility to manage the tax rate annually, and it's also, under this scenario, reduces the total tax rate to 7.38 approximately. So the estimated D428 tax bill for a homeowner with a 150 market value would be about $4 or $10, fairly flat.
So instead of the 150, at least from what the last.
The 115, yes.
115,
Yes.
so came down 111, a decrease of $111 to the individual tax owner that has $150,000
Yes.
property,
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
Using this plan.
Using this plan. And again, it's estimates. I mean, it really depends on where the EAVs fall, but that's probably a fairly close estimate.
Yes.
Yes.
And what prompted this is the board wanted you to look at options for how we can relieve taxes to the individual homeowners.
Yes.
Right?
But I still don't see an option in all the options, and this is something that we're gonna get into, but I don't see a tax levy freeze option anywhere in this.
Yeah, I'll get into that. There's the last option actually is. So option 2, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to wait till the end, but there's so much here that we probably better.
Yeah.
So the assessor provides an estimate for new growth. And do they differentiate between residential, commercial, institutional, manufacturing?
Yeah, most of that new growth was commercial. That 2.5 million.
All right, because that's something I'm very interested in now, considering that, we certainly want to develop the base and broaden the economy locally and so on. But at the same time, as a school board, it's seats and buildings and teachers that we really have to worry about, that we have the revenue to support that.
Mhm.
So in my view, lately, when I think of new growth, I'd like to know whether it's residential or not. Everything else or residential. You know, because I think we have to levy for residential, but we may or may not have to or want to levy at sometimes for everything else. So that's why I asked the question about how does the assessor develop the estimate? And do they get into the fine tuning to that
They do
extent?
break it down by residential, commercial. It was very little residential, most of that.
About 8 homes over on Taylor.
Yeah, okay, so you would expect this year to see a big change in our need for revenue as a result of new growth.
Not on the residential side.
Yeah, okay.
So option 2 is to hold the CPI at 0% but still capture the new growth. So what this does is basically instead of getting, it reduces the operating levy by about $1 million. So remember when we did that calculation, the new growth part was, the 2.1% was a little over $1 million. So we would forego those dollars. In this scenario, although another thing here, though, we do want to try and capture that new growth from the assessor, which would include that TIF increase estimate of about $5.4 million. This reduces the operating levy by about $1 million, like I mentioned, and then annually, and then these dollars will not be recouped in the future through the PTEL calculation. So for example, if the CPI remained at 2% for, let's say, the next 2 years, the cumulative loss over the 3 years, which is 2018, 2019, and 2020, is over $3.1 million. We would not request, again, in this scenario, that interest rate rebate to be added to our bond and interest levy. This reduces the tax rate to the 7.47. In this scenario, for the same homeowner, it's about a $45 increase. And again, this creates a cumulative loss over a period of time because of the PTEL calculation. Now, option 3 is matching our prior year extension. So basically not asking for any increase whatsoever based on what we were extended last year. So this option doesn't capture an increase for inflation or new growth. We actually do, in this scenario, would have to abate bond and interest as well because our bond payments went up this year, so we would have to abate about $483,000 bond and interest. Again, we wouldn't ask for the increase for the bad interest rate or interest rebate. We reduce our operating levy by the CPI inflation portion as well as the new growth portion, so about $1.2 million. And again, annually, these dollars can't be recouped in the future. So over a 3-year period, based on that same example of a 2.1% CPI over the next 2 years, it's about a $3.7 million cumulative loss over that 3-year period. It does reduce the total tax rate to 7.39, and then the projected increase for a homeowner with 150 market value is about $6.
This one, unlike the previous two, does not include anything related to TIF 3.
This one would not. This one, we're basically just saying we want to keep everything exactly the same as last year. So we're not capturing any new growth for inflation or for the new growth that the assessor has given us, as well as the new growth potentially for TIF 3.
Something that, when we talked last time about this, we were going to go through these options as far as long-term things that deficits to the district in the sense of starting fresh and then having to work up from there, or any number of these other issues that you and I had talked about. But option 1, option 2, option 3, we have to the option 1, we have $5 raise or something like that in tax to the individual homeowner, $150,000 house. The next option 2, we went to $45, which is not as much of a statement, in my opinion. But do we have a benefit on that 45? Is there any real benefit to us as a district long term for that? I mean, what are we getting out of that? Keeping it at a higher rate for the. I know it's not a high rate, but it's still half of what we're, instead of reducing down to an almost negligible amount, we're still keeping it at a $45 up. So what are we getting out of that particular plan?
Honestly,
Anything?
we're losing, not really. No,
Okay,
we're really
so-
losing. Yeah.
So net we're not working out very and we're not giving as much to the homeowner, and we're not making as much of a statement, and we're not really getting anything out of it.
Right.
So this one, say number three, we're back down to the $5 or $6, right? And I think that's a heck of a lot more of a statement to the individual homeowners. That's what we're trying to do. What is the difference between this long-term, difference between 3 and 1?
Can I go to the next, because I have a summary slide that kind of will help.
Sorry, I'm really
No,
going
that's
at
fine.
individual
That's a good
each one.
No, that is a good question. But then I have a summary slide that kind of has it gridded out, and then we can kind of take a look at each and.
Okay,
positives and negatives.
Great, but keep that in mind for.
Yep. No, absolutely. So here it is, actually.
Okay,
Here
good.
is our levy request summary options. So again, just reminding us as where we're at with the estimates that we received from the assessor. So option 1, which is the reduced at bond and interest levy by 1.7 million. So here, we're still being able to capture the new growth in the CPI. So we're not going to see, again, our future operating fund impact is more of a short-term loss because it's a one-time option that we can do on an annual basis. We are including the potential for the TIF 3 increment in this option as well. And in this option, we're reducing the bond and interest levy. And the use of district operating funds, yes, we determine that annually, and taxpayer savings, yes. So that's that option. Honestly, this is the option that I would suggest because it doesn't have that long-term impact. Option 2, again, this one, are we capturing property tax revenue growth? No, we are not for inflation, but we are trying to capture new growth. So that's why it kind of ends up being in the middle of the two. There is a long-term loss in revenue because that decrease in the operating levy results in that for the detail calculation. We are including the potential for the TIF 3 increment. Here, we're reducing the bond and interest levy just by that bad interest rebate only. And the use of district operating funds, yes, we will be using operating funds to support this, but there's not going to be any future recoup of those funds. And then, again, a taxpayer savings here. And then option 3, we're not capturing any CPI or new growth. We will see a future operating fund impact, a long-term loss. We're not including the potential for TIF 3. We are reducing the bond and interest levy in order to match it up with the prior year. We are using district operating funds, which with no future recoup, and then there's also taxpayer savings here as well.
So, making it clear, and I know it's a petty thing to a certain extent, we're saying we're not going to increase taxes, or our part of it. $5 and $6 is in a sense not increasing taxes. What are we getting for that $6 that we are not at zero? Why not zero? What do we get for the $6?
Exactly.
In other words, we're trying to make I mean, this was a huge part of what we discussed is say, we want to make a statement that we are not going to go up this year. So when we say we're not going up this year and then say, but we are going up $6, and that's the price of a lunch, a cheap lunch. So, so the point is, why not zero?
Well, we can just increase that bond and interest levy or abatement by a few $1,000s to get there.
I would recommend that.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my thought.
Exactly.
I'd rather have it, that thing
Okay.
looks a
And
lot
again,
better than just, a little bit.
That $4 is an estimate too, because we don't,
On option 1.
If we can get that to option 1, I think that would be ideal.
Yeah,
Like-
$6. What is-
I do want to reiterate.
I need option 1.
Jeff,
oh yeah, option, yeah.
just keep in mind that all of this that is on the screen it is an estimate because what we received from the county is an estimate of what our EAV will be. The rate setting EAV won't occur until after tax appeals have concluded.
I appreciate that, Jamie.
So
I think what we can say
So
though is we're
really,
shooting for
if
1.
our EAV comes back a little higher than the county is estimating, which doesn't usually happen, then that $4 could actually go negative. If it comes back lower than what's been estimated, then that $4, could be $8. So, but Cindy can adjust that in our bond and interest.
Right.
I think what's important there is to just say, we are going for 0.
Exactly.
We are going for 0. We have to defer to the county as far, there will be something that comes up. It could either go down even from zero or up a little bit from zero, but we're shooting for a zero.
Right.
And I think that everybody would understand that we can't always hit that mark because of other factors.
Well, and plus two, not every person is taxed the same, and not
Right.
everybody's getting the same EAV increase. So the overall increase in the existing EAV is 4.1%, but you might have DeKalb Township where their EAVs are only going up by 3%. So they would actually see a decrease in their taxes. Then you might have an Alton Township or out in Portland or out in Malta where their EAV increase is something different. So we have to base everything on the total.
But,
So you may not,
Same
that may not be the case for everybody. It's gonna be different.
but what is consistent though for everyone is the 7.3848, the rate.
Yeah, the rate is
And-
consistent.
A little
Yeah.
harder for people to understand.
But the rate is what's applied to
I got it,
our property
I
to generate
But-
your and my tax bill. So if, the 76273, which is what was the 10/20, September or October 29 number, now we're looking at a rate of 738,
Quite a
which
bit less.
Quite a bit less,
is,
and I think that that's significant, again, and again, we're working with flexible things, but I think the intent, I think a stated intent by us, if we're gonna go to all this trouble to give people money back, or not give people money back, but not increase our rate, I think if we're gonna go to all this trouble, and it's gonna cost us some money out of our operating fund, I think we should, our thing should be, we're going to zero. We're gonna try to make it as close to zero as we can
And
possibly make.
honestly, yeah, I mean, I've ran these numbers about.
I understand it.
And,
You're
we're
just
trying to
being
get-
honest there.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
You're being honest, but I think we should say that that's where we're trying to go.
And we can actually, I talked with the county as well, and we actually get our extension in April or March, whenever that occurs. We can tweak it even up to that point, where we can get it to that, and then I can run it through the calculation and use that same example again. It's not gonna be the same for everybody, and get it to that zero number.
I have a question for you. Option two, if you could go back to it. You're stating that we would have a loss, but I'm understanding that we are foregoing a revenue. That's what I understand.
Right.
So it's not a loss.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's just however you wanna, what term you wanna use, but it basically means that we're foregoing that revenue in the future. So technically, if we're not gonna go get that revenue, then it is a loss, I guess, when I look at it from that
but
perspective.
here's the difference. The difference is, if someone has a job and they negotiate a salary at $100,000, and they know that 2% is going to be the cap of their annual increase. And in year one, they forego that increase. And next year, it's that 2% is still on the 100,000. So in year two, if it was, the 100,000 plus 2%, that's their next base the next year. So in essence, what we would be doing is foregoing any increase. And as Cindy,
That's the word, foregoing, not a loss.
Well,
That's what I
It's the
understand.
compounding.
that's
That's
the
the
compounding part,
Yeah.
because if we do it for 2 years, we have a pay freeze for 2 years. In year three, I'm still, my rate, my base is still 100. And as Cindy showed early on, it starts with what last year's extension was. So if we forego an extension, then next year will be really, our base would be not this past year, but the previous year, because we passed for a year, we took a freeze for a year. So that's why she's showing that over, again, it's just like, if you get a pay freeze for 2 or 3 years, your base is still your base.
And I think we all understand that, but, and I think, for my part, my question was about that, but in reality, I still, correct me if I'm wrong, Victoria, I think that in our discussion last time, our goal was, we had agreed for the most part, 4 of us agreed that we wanted to look at what it would look like to have a tax freeze, right? A complete tax freeze, tax levy freeze. And so my question is, we have those 3 options, but we don't have one that's specifically geared towards that exact zero that we're wanting. Am
I
I,
think one does that.
see, and I still think one doesn't.
No?
I
In what way don't you like one?
I don't think, well, for one, I don't think it really explores what zero would look like at 100%.
I don't think anything can.
I mean,
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. I mean, again, when we know the numbers, we can tweak it to get there. And it, because if you did the same rate on some other property, it might not end up being.
And I get that, I get that it is,
So trying to get, I mean, we can tweak the bond and interest reduction to get us to a point where this turns to zero for that 150,000 market value property.
okay,
Now, you know I'm crazy about this stuff.
I am
I'm not-
too.
Okay, but the point is, I'm crazy about this stuff. I like one. I think that one is about as good as we're gonna get. And I really don't wanna penalize ourselves into a place where, and Cindy and I have talked about this. I think that, I think this is a really great step. I think this is terrific, and I think one is our best way of getting there, really.
My concern is, think about this right now, what the city is proposing, right? It's insane. If we did, I mean, I think we have to be very mindful of what we send, especially since we're trying to send a clear message to the taxpayers, right? The city is obviously asking to recoup, right? Or to, there's 6%, right? That's what the city is proposing at this moment, right? If we're not very mindful and I mean, I'm not saying option one isn't the best option. I'm just saying that we have to really think about this and decide what is the best option to send that message so that we don't, and you've said this many times, we don't end up with, and you've said it in different terms, a ghost town, right? People are really moving out of here and packing up quicker than we can say it.
We can only do what we can do. The city's in a completely different
And I
situation
get
than we
that.
are.
And I get that.
And I wouldn't want to be in that situation. I'd much rather be in our situation, but we can send a message. And like I say, I think the one, and I'm hard nosed on this thing. I think one is a good option, and I think that it's been worked out very carefully by Cindy and Jamie. I think that this is a good way to go. And I really don't think we can commit to more than a year at a time. We have to look at each time.
1 year at a time, exactly.
Yeah, so all we're really doing at this point is we're making a very expensive gesture in the sense of some of the ways that she explained. We're making a very expensive or costly gesture would be a better way of saying it. We're making a costly gesture. What's the number? 1.2, 1.6 or something like that?
1.7 million.
$1.7 million it's going to cost us to do this in a sense of cost. I don't like that term, but we are making this is a very expensive
I
gesture.
like that term. I like the idea in one that we're going to take money out of the fund balance because we're fat. We're really fat right now. I mean, the state did some things to how we calculate GSA. We had no control over any of this, okay? And things can change again. I mean, what about the pension stuff, right?
Well, right,
So-
we want to keep that out there and we don't want to get too,
We don't want to get skinny
yeah, we
Right
want to
now,
stay
you know.
somewhat conservative, but we have.
because there are
put
things
down-
out there that are hanging over our head and we just don't know yet. But on the other hand, our ratio is 15 to 25% and we're at 43.5. And I think out of that amount, $1.7 million is reasonable. And I think that sends a message. I mean, I don't know how into the
I don't
weeds
like
the
the
people
fat
get,
part.
you know,
I
when
like
they
the
look
fat
at.
part. I like the fact that we have made there's been some things that have happened to our district. We want to share that with the people that put us here.
Yeah.
Right? We want to share those things that have happened to the district that have given us some extra money. We want to say, okay, it may only be $150 to somebody or $115. That's not the point. The point is, we want to go back to the people that give it to us and say, we want to share this, give this back, or share this back. Yes.
Having said all that, Jeff, the thing I don't like, Cindy, about number one, option one, is that we are capturing that new growth.
Exactly.
And the reason I'm not so much against capturing new growth,
Mhm.
but if 3 is a pie in the sky at the moment.
And well, and the thing is though, we're asking to capture it. If it doesn't happen, this rate will go down.
Yeah.
So that's not a guarantee. I mean, if those things do not occur, we just will not. We just ask for more than what we're going to get.
So what would it look like if we don't recapture? Why can't we not recapture at all?
Well, we want to make the request just in case it does happen, because if we don't request it, then we will lose it. We can't go back and ask later.
Back to the compounding effect.
Yeah, that's the
what kills you in the long run.
Yeah, so you have to ask for more to get last time you did, it sounds crazy, but you have to ask for, anticipate what might happen with that. And again, if it doesn't happen, we will not get those dollars because they just will not be available.
And what would it look like in terms of numbers? Like, what could it perhaps look like? That's what I'm asking. Like, if we decide that this is, when I envision a tax levy, I also envision not recapturing anything at all. And that's what I'm saying.
That really is more like option 3 because you're not capturing anything.
So in option 1, right now, for a $150,000 home to be a $4 increase, and that would be with the new growth capture. If the new
Yes.
growth was not captured because there was no new growth or less new growth,
It might go down because this tax rate will probably, well, it may increase. Actually, but the
and that
tax rate,
depends on the EAV again.
it depends on the AV because they both work in concert with each other. So it's difficult to really pin it down now because we just don't have, the true numbers yet. So, again.
But again, what Jamie said, you can adjust the bond and interest levy later.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yes.
So there's a little flexibility.
Mhm.
Your aim can be a little bit better because you can adjust that number later on.
Yeah, right after.
Yes.
So really, I guess the question is, it will not go higher than this $4.
No, not under the 1 point. If we wanted to, when all the numbers are known and then we can figure that what true that exact number would be. But again, that exact number isn't going to be for everybody. If we just use this 150 example,
for
and just as a base.
This is splitting hairs, but is there a way to make the language in the motion or whatever we vote on, to add or subtract dollars from operating from the fund balance to hit 0?
Well, this is.
That would be really good.
Here's what
I'd like that.
a good suggestion would be, because again, this is the ask. What we're doing now is just putting out the estimated levy. When we actually go to our hearing in December 18th, we can still adjust these numbers, and I will know more about the tip. I'm hoping by then. And then we may get I can ask for new estimates from the assessor to see if we can get, hone in a little more. Then we can adjust that 1.7 million to be something more than that, or maybe less, you never know, and to come up with that 0 here. So again, this is just the ask. This is not what's going to get adopted.
Based on estimates by the county.
Right.
Yeah.
So we still have to go through the process of publishing this, having the hearing, and then actually adopting a levy December 18th, where we can adjust these numbers.
Okay, so there's still adjustments that can be done in future board
Right.
meetings.
So the only approval here is to use these numbers for our ask based on the estimate.
Yeah, I just want to say
Yes,
this.
one more.
I just want to express thanks for putting us in this situation, and to both Jamie and to you in putting us in this situation, because I think this was where we were going when we asked you to do it. And I think that this is in keeping with what I was hearing from the majority of the board last time. I think, in fact, I can say everybody on the board has pretty much expressed this intent. And I just want to say that this is something that we're working towards, and it's going to be hard for the average taxpayer to see. There's going to be no 0 on here, on their tax statement. There's going to be nothing that says 0, but our idea is that we are trying to hit that number.
One gives us, from a marketing point of view, one gives us some good things, right? First of all, it's the lowest rate out of the 3 options. Okay, second of all, as Cindy just said, we could add or subtract money from the fund balance, and abate a little bit more, a little bit less. And bond and interest, when the numbers will become firmer, you can adjust that. So there's the greatest flexibility in option 1. And there's a good chance that the average cost of a $150,000 home could end up being 0, or very close to it.
And depending on because if their assessed value is less than the 4.1, then they will see either 0 or something a little less.
Yeah.
Right.
If their assessed value is more than the 4.1, then it might be the other way around. It just depends on where you're at and what township you're in.
I think it's important. So logistically, is that something that we have to then, the part that Terry talked about, we have to add that as?
Yeah, how do we make sure that we're not precluding ourselves from being able to adjust the abatement?
Well, and again, you're voting just on the estimate. We're not adopting the levy tonight.
Okay.
So we can make those adjustments through the adoption portion. That's the adoption portion are the real numbers that we will send to the county.
So there's no need tonight to change the wording of the motion.
No, you
We'll
can
just
basically
vote.
say which option,
Which
but
option.
when we actually adopt, that's when we can fine tune some numbers and
Yeah.
maybe we'll know more as well.
Val, you have one more.
Yeah, I have one more question. I know that we're solid on 1 to some degree, but I also think 3 is a good option, just looking at, I think those were some of the questions that I kept asking. As far as capturing property tax revenue, CPI and growth, that says no, right? Future, long-term loss, right? Potential, I think it pretty much goes in depth into what more I was thinking about. I don't know what you guys feel, but I'm thinking option 3 might be better in a sense, I guess.
What's the most important sense?
Well, but the problem is that doesn't, like, there's, say, no future recap. I mean,
But it's for one-
Flexibility.
And it's not for 1 year because we're always using the previous year's extension jumping off point. So you're losing revenue, if you say 1 million less in this year, then that 1 million less in next year plus whatever the CPI is. And then it accumulates year to year because of the PTEL calculation. Now, non-PTEL counties have a completely different situation. They can basically do what we're doing with the bond and interest levy. They can do that from year to year back and forth. They can say a little less and then get it back in the next year.
Because you're not capped.
Because they're not captive.
Yeah.
all right, well, let me read the motion here. That the Board of Education approve option number 1 of the estimated tax levy request options for the 2018 tax year for publication.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I'd still like to recommend option 3. And the reason for that is that the TIF 3 is just not, when I look at the amount that's expected to come in, it's not that the EAV isn't going to go up by $5 million. It's that it's going to generate $5 million per year in tax revenue. And I don't see a way, given the amount of physical space that's covered in the TIF 3 area, that we're actually going to be able, that the city's going to be able to do that.
Can I respond? Yeah, the actual, it's not 5.4 million more in revenue from the TIF. It's 5.4 million increment, which does get added to the EAV. So basically what's happening is that 5.4 million, what's going on with TIF 3 is that there's properties in TIF that are already tipped. They're either in TIF 2 or TIF 1. Most of them are in TIF 1. So in order to basically re-tip them into TIF 3, they have to take the increment that has been accumulated over the 23 years since TIF 1 has been in existence and take them out of TIF 1 and put them into TIF 3. So it resets the increment. I know it's kind of confusing, but basically that 5.4 million isn't revenue, it's increasing our EAV. And that when I say capturing EAV or new growth is capturing the EAV growth, not necessarily the revenue. The revenue we can generate off that 5.4 million is about 300,000, 300,000.
It resets the base.
It resets
of
the base.
Of the TIF.
Yeah.
Assuming most TIFs are 23 years, that would be the base for the next 23.
And if it doesn't occur, we can't get access to those dollars. It just doesn't happen. But by doing option 1, we're just projecting for that to happen or just being conservative just in case it does happen.
If you didn't have to worry about the pension issue or other potential legislation, then maybe you pick a different thing, and maybe you pick 3. But I think because you get the flexibility based on things Springfield can do to us, then option 1 gives us that flexibility, I think. And I think it also sends a good message is that rates the lowest, we'll probably hit 0. If we do some adjustment, we probably, we should be able to hit 0. I think it sends a good message in a marketing sense. I mean, if there's a marketing expert here, they can speak to it better than I could, but and 3 doesn't give you that kind of strategy or flexibility.
I like the marketing aspect, Terry, but I'm going to go back to the fact that we're partners here. We're sent by those people.
Yeah.
We want to do right by those people.
Yeah. Well, and back to what I said earlier, how deep do people get? I mean, most homeowners, they just try to check for $5,000 or whatever it is, right? They never look at this kind of stuff. They might look at the rate, like I said, when someone's thinking about whether to move to Kelm, Sycamore, or wherever, they're probably gonna look at the rate. That's what most people do. But even that, we found out tonight, isn't really what determines your specific situation, because your local assessor is gonna be the one really that determines your particular situation. Your increase or decrease in actual tax isn't controlled only by the rate, but by what that assessor says your property is worth.
All right, roll call, please.
Troy Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albert,
Yes.
Terry Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez,
I'm voting no. I'm still convinced that we could do better for our taxpayers.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Talman,
No.
And I have a last slide, and I don't want to get too much into this, just so you know that there is some state property relief grant that's out there right now that we're looking into. I'm not sure if we'll make it to the list. There's about $50 million available that we need to apply by January 7th. We're 112 of 851 school districts on the list that could apply for this and potentially get some dollars. Although the way it's going to work is they're going to start at the top of the list and go down, and 50 million goes away about number 23. So whether we would get there or not, I don't know. It just depends on what districts may apply for this, but I suggest that we should apply, because then we can use the dollars from the state to help support what we're trying to do with the tax rate.
You said it goes away for the top 20 or the most needy 23, is that?
Well, it starts at, like the first district that had, let's say, the highest tax rate, the way they would calculate it, and then it just goes down from there, and we're 112 out of 851 voters. So again, this year, there's 50 million available, but it may get used up before they get to us, but I think it's still worth a shot too. Basically just more informational, just so you know that's out there and it's available.
Thank you. Good luck to us.
Yeah.
Next, we have new business and administration, 2019-2020 school calendar, and this is an informational item.
Well, and I'm bringing it back as an informational item again, because 3 days after our board meeting, we received a memo from the State Board of Education defining what an instructional day is. In essence, it's a new guidance document on how to build your school calendar. Obviously, we brought our school calendar in front of the board, we reviewed it, and then some new information. But actually, it's positive. Our school calendar, as it's laid out structurally, is we're not requesting to make any changes. But on Friday, October 25th, which was a full day of Teacher Institute, the new guidance document has eliminated school districts from being able to count a full day parent-teacher conference as an attendance day. It used to be set up where you had 176 attendance days, but 2 of those days could be parent-teacher conferences. That has been eliminated. What the state board has done, though, is one thing they did was they took away the required seat minutes for a school day. It used to be 5 clock hours. You had to have students in your buildings for 5 clock hours to count as a school day. That has been eliminated. There is no requirement. It's a local requirement now, a local decision on what a school day is. The second item that they've included, and I'm just going to read from this memo, must all instructional days be classroom-based? And the answer is no. An instructional day need not be confined to a classroom-based instruction. Students learn in a variety of ways and a variety of settings. Districts may define engagement and student learning in a number or combination of ways. Examples: classroom instruction, online instruction, independent research, work-based learning, internships, just to name a few. ISBE encourages districts to use the flexibility afforded in this new law to innovate with respect to new ways of engaging students in learning centered on student competency and mastery of subject matter. And they go on to say that they recognize that student engagement or learning, it can occur anytime, anywhere, or any portion of an instructional day. So a district such as 428, which is a one-to-one district, this opens up a lot of possible avenues. And this is moving towards, under the State Superintendent Tony Smith, who unfortunately with, as you know, governors changed, he probably will be gone as well when the new governor comes in. But under Tony Smith and the current State Board of Education, they are concerned about competency-based education and not just doing seat time. In other words, when a student has demonstrated mastery, it's time to move them on instead of making them sit in a seat for another 70 days potentially. So what this document gives us the opportunity to do is take that October 25th in Parent-Teacher Conference Day and make that also a student engagement day. And we have, the good news is we have a year to work with the teachers and administrators to define what that day could potentially look like. It could be as simple as you're in an English literature class and you have a writing assignment, reading assignment. You're in an English comp class, you have a writing assignment. Again, students who take these home, it could be a preloaded assignment that students are expected to work on that particular day. Student learning can occur now anytime, anywhere. And so what we're proposing is parent-teacher conferences will go on as normally scheduled. That day will be a student engagement day. Students just won't be physically in the building. This also opens up some conversation for other things, which I'll hold for another time. But I was shocked when I read it initially. I reread it and talked to other administrators. They're really opening it up for us for some positive, potentially positive change.
So when you said preloaded, and this is a Ben Bell question, a flipped classroom would have to operate with internet. I mean, correct? So there's really, so I'm full support. I truly think that's where it's going, but I think we need to also kind of step back a minute and think, and like you said, we have a year to figure it out, but if we vote yes today and then there's like, well, we have to also think about the kids who may not have access to the internet. So I understand that that's something personal that the parents are going to figure out. Are we going to team up with the library to maybe provide, I don't know, I'm just in my mind thinking about the students who may not have access to it.
Well,
Let me clarify on that actually. So we actually have some partnerships with local businesses as well as the library and other public Wi-Fi locations for our students. Or if a student were to walk into McDonald's and not necessarily buy a soda pop or something like that, that they're not chased out. We also, with the Chromebooks, the student can still authenticate even without internet, and they can still create documents, and it will hold the document until they have internet access again before it syncs it. So it basically holds the document locally, and then when they have internet access, then it puts it into Google Drive. So if it's already pre-shared, then it will go to wherever it's supposed to go. So let's say it was a Google Classroom assignment that was pushed out to the students. The student, if they pulled the assignment before they head home, if they don't have internet access, they could still complete the assignment, and then it will sync once they have internet access again.
So we're one-to-one, but from 3rd grade to 12.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do in their K-2? I mean, is that been discussed or?
Well, it could be as much as, for this particular instance, because the teachers know that it's October 25th, it could be just like we do now. It's a packet that would go home that is expected to be completed on that particular day. The interesting part also in this document, they go on to say there's a question, must all students be engaged in educational programming and learning at the same time, same schedule? And the answer is no. Students learn in a variety of ways and environments. They have many different schedules and modes of instruction depending upon individual student needs. So even the state board is acknowledging here that it doesn't have to be at the exact same time. So, you know, we wouldn't even necessarily have to schedule on that day that from 9 till noon or 9 till 1 that students are logged in. Again, anytime, anywhere, not on necessarily on the same schedule. Interestingly, there's another one-to-one district, and I have to go back in my notes and look. I know it's a district around Joliet. I think it was Lockport, I'm not 100% sure. They're a one-to-one district. They don't have snow days.
That makes sense.
Now they have days where students don't come in because it's not safe. When the call is made that they're not going to be in attendance, teachers will push out assignments and students get access. Now, in this case, you would have a challenge because the students.
We have our demographics, that's what I think.
Now, I'm not suggesting that we move that way just yet. I think we have a lot of discussions, but there is one particular district, they don't have snow days.
And I like how you're just bringing, I attended one of the conferences for our division for school board, and I brought back information. I think I photocopied it and shared it with all of you guys. It was about a high school. I don't know what high school it was. I can go back to my notes, but they do a lot of, they don't make their students come in, a lot of, especially the kids who need that challenge. So they attend 2 to 3 times during the week, and then they do a lot more at home, one-to-one, especially when we're one-to-one, you know, a district that's one-to-one technology. So is that something that you're exploring as far as the high school goes, and maybe to offer, and it allows them to offer more things because of that? Is that something that you're looking at?
I will say, am I exploring it? Not yet.
Oh.
But that is definitely the whole flipped classroom concept. Again, this is leading us right to that. So a lot of different opportunities. So
I think the concept between, I teach both online and face-to-face, kind of the challenge that online faces compared to face-to-face. I mean, you have to have people that can instill discipline in those people. You get, it's a completely, I mean, I think it's a very different engagement, incredibly different engagement. So it has more than just the concept of saying, can these people do this from another spot? It's really I think it's a learning process.
well, and interestingly, I was talking to Tim Carlson, who is the principal at Sycamore. And one of the things that they are discussing is a requirement that every student have an online course because of that. Because as our kids are moving off into this world, there's a pretty good chance
In college,
that they're going to have an online course.
it's huge.
And so let's give them that
And
experience.
I think that that's really a wonderful idea, is to get, instead of just throwing them in cold and saying, here's the
Because it's a
water,
different learning
swim,
environment.
to learn online skills or teaching skills. I think that's huge. This is as important as a lot of trade teaching or any number of other skill teaching.
So I brought this back as again, an informational item instead of an action item. So we being myself and the calendar committee and any BCTA reps, have time to discuss this before we bring it back as an action item to the next meeting.
Okay, so do we have a consensus to bring back the 2019-2020 school calendar?
Yes.
Okay, next we have approval of materials proposal for AP Statistics. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the AP Statistics materials proposal as attached. We have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Gary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Baker.
Yes.
Next is the intergovernmental agreement relating to tax increment financing districts. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the intergovernmental agreement relating to tax increment financing districts as attached.
Can I do it now?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this item.
Okay, do we have a second? Roll call, please.
Chair Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Craig Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Hoffman.
Yes.
Okay, and with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Would you like the word?
We do.
Yeah.